What's up, you motherfuckers? Good to see you. Yeah, so, a few months ago, this is a while ago now, when I first started doing movie reviews, I reviewed Hunger Games. And I reviewed them after, this is a while after I'd read the books, after only one movie had come out. And it was, I didn't really have many nice things to say about it. I had a couple of comments, positive comments, but the rest was negative. And I'd like to change some of my opinions with it after reading the second book again, Catching Fire, and then being halfway through Mockingjay again. So basically, at the top of the video, I said Katniss is a bitch. She's a selfish cow. All she cares about is herself, and I think that's wrong. I made that point, and I was very wrong with it. Basically, she, like I said, she was a bitch because of circumstance. Life had made her this hard person that made her think that every time something good was going to happen, it was going to be taken away from her. They'd lived in a world without hope, without chance of anything better. It was always this mundane world where every year, two of your kids are taken and thrust into the great games, and you're probably never going to see them again. And people get ill, there's not enough food, it's cold, it's horrible, there's no entertainment, there's nothing, you just work and then you die, and then you have kids, and then you offer them up to the game. So I always thought Katniss was a bitch, but then I was wrong. Once I reread it, I realised she wasn't. She doesn't only care about herself. She doesn't act like a bitch for the sake of, oh, I'm a snot-nosed brat, I won the games, blah, 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 blah. She's like this because she doesn't want to be taken for a fool. She doesn't want to take chances if it means people she loves getting hurt. And sometimes she's at one with herself because she'll think this is the right thing to do, but this person's going to get hurt, and this person's going to get hurt, and I don't want to hurt them, and I don't want them to know that I've hurt them, and I don't want to have to live with myself afterwards, or could I live with myself? So, I thought she was a bitch, that she was just like Bella from Twilight, constantly playing, the whole Jacob Edward thing. I thought that she was doing the same with Gale and Peter, but it's not the truth, because she loves them both, but in different ways, just like in Twilight. Gale was a friend who was always there for her, but Peter and her got put together. She didn't choose, she chose to like Gale. Over time, it was a bond. Her and Peter's was kind of accelerated. He always liked her, but it was kind of like the way when it started, it was like it was just her playing for the cameras because she wanted to live, because she wanted to get home to Prim. And then after that, it was like she started to like him without realizing. It's like that song "Accidentally in Love." She kind of fell for him without realizing, and she was mad at him. I think the whole time she was mad because she cared about him, or she didn't care about him, and she didn't know how she felt about him, and felt like she was betraying Gale, so she was half and half, and she didn't know. But the whole time, everything she does out of love for people. So I take back what I said when I said Katniss is just this bitch of a protagonist. I was wrong about her. I'm going to do a little quick review of Catching Fire, the movie. This, once again, like the first one, was pretty close to the book in many ways. Number 2, Catching Fire, was very close to the book again. This is one of the most faithful adaptations I've ever seen. There are a few things, obviously there's going to be spoilers in it, but there were a few things in it that they left out for obvious reasons. Which I might explain in another video, because I know I wrote some down and I forgot. I'm going to forget a few of them. But there were a few things they changed in the movie for the obvious reason of people who hadn't read the book wouldn't know what's happening, and they didn't want to give the plot away. But obviously when you read the book, you can pretty much figure out, based on a couple of things, what this means, how this relates to that. So, people read the book would have to, when they're reading it, they're going to have to wait. No, it takes longer to read the book than to watch the movie. So they're going to have to wait longer for the answer anyway. So, it's kind of interesting. Firstly, in the book, there are these two characters, Bonnie and Twill, who don't appear in Catching Fire, and Katniss finds them when she's hunting in the woods one day, and they're dressed like peacekeepers, and she thinks they're peacekeepers, but they're not, and they escaped from one of the districts. I think it was like District 8. I can't recall the districts, but they escaped from one. In their district they made like peacekeeper outfits, and there was an explosion, and their families were killed, and basically they escaped to 12. because they realised that on every year on the tribute package where it shows you, it does a quick rehash of why they have the Hunger Games. There was always the same video feed of District 13. It was always the same video footage. And whereas each year they went to a different district and showing how that district is now, 13 was always the same one. It was always this little, I think it was a Mockingjay that was always in the same frame. So it was like, so they clicked on with, well, if they keep showing that frame, they obviously don't want you to see what's there now. So there's probably a civilization where they lived underground and struck some kind of deal with the capital that they'll be left alone if they don't cause any havoc. So they try and escape to the capital. So they're trying to escape to District 13 via District 12, but obviously you find out in Mockingjay that they never made it there. But they have these like crackers, and on these crackers, or cracker or wafer, or whatever it was, it had the symbol of a Mockingjay, and Katniss didn't realise, but it was part of the sign of the symbol of an uprising. It's kind of like Dumbledore's army, where they had the coin, as a way of telling where the next meeting's going to take place and things like that. So it was just or the Deathly Hallows sign, where it's just a sign of believers to another believer to help each other on the quest to find the items, So it was just a sign of the rebellion of the Mockingjay spirit, and Plutarch Heavensbee, who was played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, who died recently, which made me really, really sad. He had a pocket watch in the book, in Catching Fire, and when he's dancing with Katniss, he shows her this watch, and he's kind of doing this thing like, oh, so much to do, so little time. He kind of shows her this watch, and for a brief second, there's a flash of a Mockingjay, and then it's gone. And he kind of pretty much just hints to her, like if she would have clicked on at the time, she didn't know. He pretty much just told her what the games were going to be like, and that it was on her side. But obviously they didn't show you that or the Twill thing in the movie, because then there'd be a real rebellion going on underneath. And they don't want to let you know that Plutarch was on her side, because then you'd feel like, oh, she's never in any real danger because he's on her side, and they didn't want to spoil that for the moviegoers. So, they left that out, and he did play a part of, oh, I'm a real dickhead. He played that part well. So you think, like when he's saying like, oh, we need to do public executions and, pull the knot closer on them and things like that, you believe, okay, he's this bad guy, unless you read the book and you know that he's all doing it, it's all for show, it's all a facade. And at the end of the last one, people are just kind of thinking, if you haven't read the book, you're kind of like, what the fuck's going on? So you kind of they left all those little things out, so you didn't know what was going on, really. So this was a very, very faithful adaptation. Some lines are like word for word the same as in the book, and a lot of things unfold the same way they do in the book. And you sit there watching it, and you're like, this is pretty much how you want an adaptation to be, to play out like it did in your head, just like it did in the book. And a lot of times people tweak with things. A few things here and there were tweaked, but it was pretty much, it was pretty good. Joanna Mason, bang on. Madge, bang on. Finnick, perfect. Things like that, quite believable. It was close to the book. And one thing I always had a problem with, which I always had trouble visualizing in my head, was the arena in Catching Fire. And it was explained well in the book, but to me, I just couldn't visualize it in my head. And when it was nice to see it on screen, so I know what it was like. I was like, oh, so that's the arena that I should have been seeing in my head. It was good. It was faithful to the story. It was every bit as interesting and exciting. And there were a couple of bits where I was like, wow, they shouldn't have missed that out. But it was all for the point of keeping the real agenda of the story quiet. Because obviously, there was a rebellion, and it was evident when you read the book. Obviously, it tells you, it hints at it, and it tells you, in Catching Fire, the movie, but President Snow doesn't say much about it. All it says is like, we're trying to prevent this, and you don't really know how much of it is going on. Whereas in the movie, in the book, it tells you a lot more in depth about what's going on. So yeah, it was a very faithful adaptation. I loved it. Despite the fact, I do love Josh Hutcherson. I love his movies. I've seen quite a few of his films, and I'm a fan of his. But I feel like for the role of Peter, he does come across as like too needy You know, too injured. Everything he says is just sounds too perfect, like he's a perfect dreamboat. Even though he's like, he's supposed to be like, he's the underdog. Who would choose him over Gale, kind of thing. I just feel like he is too perfect. He is too lovable. He is too nice. He is too much of this perfect, clean-cut guy who all he wants is Katniss, and he's prepared to die for her. It just seems a bit too good to be true. You know? But also that's just his character. He's not a complete fool. He's got more heart than most of the people in literature. I feel like it could be more. I think Jennifer Lawrence plays Katniss perfectly because you're supposed to believe that Katniss is this pretty girl. She's pretty, but she's not gorgeous, and you know she's quite plain, but she's quite pretty. You're supposed to believe that, you know, like you're supposed to believe that, okay, she's this plain, normal-ish girl, but you need to believe at the same time that men would be willing to die for her. I think Jennifer Lawrence, like in the movie, she looks quite plain, quite ordinary, plain Jane Girl next door. In real life, she is nothing short of fucking stunning, and I mean that. It's not just, she literally is one of the most stunning women you'll ever see. And I just think this adaptation, Catching Fire, is great. And if it's anything, you know, I think this is probably that was probably my favourite book. It's hard. There's aspects I love about each book, and it's hard trying to pin which one's my favourite for different reasons. But there's things about the book, there's things about the movie I really liked. Like, for instance, in the book, when Katniss goes into the training center to, you know, perform for the presentation for the game makers, you can't see what Peter's drawn on the floor. He tells Katniss when she leaves the room, when she leaves the training center. He tells her later that he drew a portrait of Rue. But it's covered up by the time when Katniss comes into the training center. It's been covered up, so she doesn't know what's gone off. But the whole thing with her hanging Seneca Crane, it looked perfect. She'd drawn the hair on and everything like that, and I just felt like that's the visual thing that I saw in my head when I was reading the book, and I was like, wow, it's amazing. And then the cheeky little bow at the end, it was just perfect. Everything about it was perfect. The little panic attack she has at the start of the film, like, it's just showing you, like, she isn't straight up, she left the Hunger Games, but no one ever wins it. They only survive it. Kind of like Haymitch said, he said, you know, no one ever wins the Hunger Games. You know, so it's just, it's a brilliant film. If you like faithful adaptations, this is the one for you. This is the one where they didn't hokey it up. They stayed true to the story. They changed up a few things, but it was to save spoilers. Really, it was really just to save the main plot from being divulged. You know, but the things they left out, you know, it was a couple of things like the clock, because I always wanted to see what the Mockingjay stopwatch would look like. You know, the clock. So maybe they'll show that in another one, in Mockingjay Part 1 or Part 2. You know, and it was just a really good film. I found myself watching it over and over again. So I think I've seen it, 4 times now. It is one of those great films. So, you know, if you like The Hunger Games, if you haven't seen it, have a look. Maybe you'll like it, because I know I did. I thought it'd be some teenage bullshit in some parts of it. It is really cheesy, but it is a realistic look on how the dystopian future could be. How, you know, if there was war, if there was nuclear war, things could end up like this one day. So it's nice to see how real people deal in the situation. Yeah, so thanks for watching. Safe, respect to your bastards.